Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to what is, of course, your weekly dose of Thursday night thrills. It is the W1 Sim Series, partnered by Sim Racing Centre, and we are both very delighted to have you along the ride for us on this Thursday evening. Last week, we witnessed an absolute slipstream shootout in the historic woodlands of Monza, pure test of raw horsepower. But tonight, we're changing those demands entirely as we trade the Temple of Speed for a diamond in the desert dusk. Yes, we have touched down under the floodlights in Qatar at the Losail International Circuit. With that ambient heat radiating off the track, well, the championship battle, that is scorching if I've ever seen it in my life. 4 drivers in contention with just 3 rounds to go, and we're getting to the stage where margin for error very, very quickly dissipating, and it should be an absolute barnstormer of a race in Qatar. But also some new faces commandeering Commentary Corner for the first time this season, and first time, of course, for the whole series. You have myself, Tom Wilkinson, alongside me it is Patrick Coleman. Patrick, first and foremost, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. It is so awesome to be here with this fantastic series for the first time. I've been watching the series here and there, and it's been an absolute roller coaster of a season. Very competitive. We got about 3 rounds to go. 4 drivers still fighting for this title, and the intensity is going to get very hot, just like the Qatar circuit itself.
Oh yes, this is going to be an exciting one. So many repercussions, so many different variables, external variables, internal variables that are going to be at play this evening. And it's going to be an absolutely fascinating one. Before we kickstart qualifying, we need to go through a couple of things just to get things going. I think we should maybe have a look at the standings heading into what is going to be a very important race here in Qatar. We mentioned that it is very, very tight, and best you believe it is very, very tight. The top 4 covered by just 17 points, with Lee Woodward atop the timing charts, or atop the standings, I should say, just 3 ahead of Rebecca Morel, with Emma Clay and Catherine Thelking very much in the equation. This is going to be an absolute barnstormer. So many factors are going to be at play here in the final 3 races to decide the destiny of this championship.
Exactly that. I mean, just one slight mess up. If you have one bad race, then that means your whole title contention can just come straight to an end here. There is a very good chance here tonight that we see 4 title contenders shrink down into just 2 remaining. Rebecca Morel and Lee Woodward, only just a few points separated. It is going to be pure cinema here tonight. Tire management is going to be so crucial. It is the only track on the F1 calendar that in the real world does have a maximum stint limit. Now, in talking with Jessica before we started the race here today, a 1-stop is very difficult, but it is very possible. So if you could pull off the 1-stop, you might have a bit of an advantage, but also safety cars might just throw a wrench into the entire operation here tonight.
100%. Could be a fascinating dynamic that will unfold. And you spoke about there the circuit. Let's have a look at it on screen. The Losail International Circuit, traditionally made for 2 wheels, but we've been doubling that in the past few years since it came onto the F1 calendar in 2021. Such a lovely flowing circuit. When you find the rhythm, it feels so nice to drive. But like you mentioned, the strategy going to be key. Those front tyres in particular, they're going to get cooked. You're putting such a load on them, so many high-speed corners. The 1-stop is faster, unquestionably, but can you make it work? That is the big dilemma for a lot of drivers. If they can't make the 1-stop work, they're going to have to think on their feet on what is the best way, the fastest way to get to the end of this race.
The track limits are also going to be a very big concern as well. I was actually just doing some practice laps on here myself, and I would always invalidate right at the end of turn 16, right near that start-finish straight. And you said that there's a lot of fast corners on this track. In 2023, there was a lot of drivers getting black and white flags for those track limit violations, and I think that could really be a key factor in tonight's race. You got to keep those tires in one piece. You got to keep them from falling apart. Aim for the 1-stop, but also try to keep it within the white lines. Those curbs are also very lethal against your tires, so you really need to try to use them as little as humanly possible here tonight.
Try and find that rhythm, try and find that flow. Something we also need to mention is the setup direction, because that's going to be a bit of a compromise potential. You have that really long start-finish straight. If you go too high on your wings, yes, you're going to be fast in the middle sector. Yes, you're going to have much better tyre wear than your rivals, but you are going to be a sitting duck down that straight. You might be fast in qualifying, but your race pace could be a bit shocking.
Exactly. I mean, it's going to be setup is like a good 50% of your battle almost. If you come into the race with a rough setup, then it's just not going to be a good night for you. Every track has a specific setup. The higher downforce setup could work, like you said. It's really just kind of a yin and yang type situation when it comes to a setup on this track. You said it absolutely perfectly, where if you prioritize top speed, you're going to be a rocket ship down that start-finish straight from turn 16 down into turn 1. But everywhere else, and also that tire wear, is going to make things absolutely tricky for these drivers to handle tonight. So you really got to find a perfect balance. And that's what these drivers have spent all week doing. Trying to find that balance to have that really good flow.
Yeah, fuel burn as well is going to be critical. A lot of the laps spent at full throttle. Braking very hard as well. So many different things the drivers have to think about. This is going to feel like an endurance race for a lot of them. And speaking of the drivers, I think we should have a look at who is joining us this evening. Because we do have 9...
Still within the chances of winning this title, that could be flipped all up on its head with a reserve driver doing extremely well here tonight.
We know how quickly things can change. They can change in a flash, especially around a circuit like this where there are, as we've said, so many external factors, variables you have to try and manage the fuel, manage the tyres, manage the pace, manage the setup, manage your overtaking as well, because it is going to be tricky, as you alluded to earlier. Only real chance down the main straight. That's the best opportunity. The heavy braking into turn 6 as well, an opportunity for drivers if they can stick like glue to the drive in front through the double right-hander, the double 90-degree right-hander of turns 4 and 5. And I'm delighted to say we aren't too far away from loading into our qualifying session. If you are new, the setup is pretty standard. Short qualifying session, that equates to 18 minutes on the clock, and it'll be a 50% race following that. Something important, though, is we will be having a lobby reset in between qualifying and the race, and that is a big one for strategy, because they get all of their soft compound tyres back into their arsenal to use in the race if we see safety cars, if they maybe even fancy the soft compound tyres. If they lock themselves into a two-stop, they might think the soft tyres are a decent place to start and try and make up some early ground.
Yeah, that's definitely true there. I mean, it's very possible that we could see a lot of soft tires being used at the start, and that is one of the benefits of doing a lobby reset as well after qualifying, because you pretty much get all those tires back. All the tires you used in qualifying back to 100%. Although I'm not too sure how many soft tires we're going to actually see tonight, considering that tire drag is going to be a huge factor. But I mean, the one thing about racing, the only predictable thing about racing is that you can come into it knowing that it is completely unpredictable. So, I mean, the temperatures here are going to be sky high. Luckily, the drivers only have to worry about tire temps, as they don't have to deal with the absolute scorching heat that this Qatar circuit is known for. I could assume it'd be a very tough race if they had to experience the near 80 to 90 degree Fahrenheit weather that this track is kind of notorious for in the real world of Formula One, and also its other motorsports, being MotoGP, GT Challenge, WEC, etc. But yeah, it's going to be tricky to see how those soft tires are going to work. But hey, I mean, sometimes the oddball strategies are the strategies that just work the best.
Sometimes if you roll the dice, you will eventually hit a double six, and that is the way that drivers will be operating. I think you mentioned it really well there. In motorsport, as motorsport fans, we see a lot of F1 drives and other motorsport disciplines where we go, I want to be in that seat. I do not envy anybody in real life that has to drive around this circuit in the baking temperatures. I mean, we can hardly operate in the UK at 30 degrees, let alone effectively doing a run in a sauna turned up to the maximum volume. So that's going to be an interesting one. But temperatures, there is another temperature that they have to factor in, and that is the engine temperatures. You don't want to lose that straight line speed. The dirty air is going to be really, really strong around this circuit. Lots of flowing high-speed corners. If you're following too closely and don't get out of that turbulent wake, the engine temperatures are going to climb and climb and climb. You're going to be down on power, and that is a significant handicap you're going to be holding for a few laps.
Exactly that. I mean, especially when you have this massive start-finish straight from turn 16 to turn 1, you do not want to lose any of that straight line speed. Because especially if you're running one of these lower downforce setups, that straight line is going to be your golden ticket to really make up some good ground. And if your engine temps are too hot, you're going to be kind of struggling on two separate fronts. You're going to be struggling in the dirty air through some of these flowing corners, potentially going over those track limits, potentially getting those penalties that can really just hurt your race. I mean, 3 seconds is a lot when it comes to penalties. Another thing that drivers are going to have to really pay attention to is the entry into pit lane. Those 10-second penalties for speeding in the pit lanes, it is no joke. It can really basically just ruin your race right then and there. Drivers are also going to have to really be careful going through turn 1 on the opening lap, because especially if you're running one of those kind of medium to higher downforce setups, you're going to want your front wing end plates. And if you break one of those end plates off, yes, you get a little bit of weight reduction, but you lose so much downforce throughout sectors 2 and 3 that it's basically not even worth it.
This is probably the one circuit, maybe Monaco, the other one, where you do not want damage. Safety cars, whilst they do happen, because the walls are so far away and there's miles and miles of runoff area and gravel, it's very difficult to find somebody pitched into the barrier, especially in the opening lap. So you want to keep that front wing intact. Like you said, it will reduce the weight, will reduce the downforce as well. So you might be a little bit quicker on a straight line, but the bucket load of understeer, add to that the dirty air, add to that the skyrocketing tyre temperatures. Yeah, that's going to be unpleasant, I think is the best way to put it. We are actually loading in very shortly. I can see the beautiful green ticks appearing down the side of the menu, which means we are less than 30 seconds away. And thank you, everybody, for joining us, spending a couple of hours watching some absolutely storming sim racing. And people in the chat, F1 Addict already repping for Charlie and Shark Loti, Emma Clay for the win, though. Who are you looking out for? Who are you supporting tonight? And who do you think is going to take the race win? Very important one for the championship, of course.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm mostly just going to root for having a fantastic race. I want to see our championship leaders do well. I want to see a championship fight. I mean, ideally, I would love to see these top 4 be in contention all the way until the final round of the season. But I'm also going to be rooting for the reserves here tonight, because they could be, like we mentioned earlier, they could be just such dark horses that it can really just shake up this order extremely nicely. So I'm ultimately rooting for a good race, but we definitely want to keep an eye on these top 4 in the championship and also the reserves. And it all starts with getting a strong qualifying performance, as we are very shortly about to jump into the quality session. 18 minutes on the clock. We'll see how drivers can go ahead and tackle the desert heat here at the Losail International Circuit.
The clock was ticking down very slowly then. They were keeping the anticipation running high, but we are into the garage of this very picturesque circuit under the night skies of Qatar, with 19 drivers ready to do battle over the next 18 minutes to try and take pole position in a qualifying session that could be very, very important. Track position going to be key. Track limits going to be an important one as well. You don't want to find yourself in the back end of this session if you haven't got a competitive lap time on the board, treading on eggshells a little bit. You don't want to be leaving time on the table because you're not confident you can get the lap in.
Confidence is going to be such a key factor here tonight. You really need to have that good confidence, especially at this stage of the season, especially if you are one of our front runners in this championship. If you are Lee Woodward, Rebecca, Emma, Catherine, if you're any of those 4 drivers, you especially need the confidence here tonight. Confidence, but also consistency, as we already see a McLaren in Sharkstorm taking out one of the distance markers on pit exit there. So we'll see how the rest of this quali session goes, but it is very early stages. A lot of drivers really trying to warm up. A lot of drivers go out at once. Some drivers waiting to try to minimize the amount of traffic. Now, if you've done this race as part of like an endurance race, like say if you've done LMU or other adjacent simulators with Qatar trying to do multi-class racing, then traffic giveth and traffic taketh away might be a sentiment you are familiar with, and that's really going to play a factor here in this qualifying as we see a good amount of the field start off kind of bunched up together, but now we also see a few other drivers just slowly making their way on through. Now, something that teammates could potentially try to come out together, like the two McLarens have, and maybe try to give each other a tow down turn 1. But through the rest of the track, getting a tow isn't exactly optimal compared to Monza.
Absolutely, you do not want to be really close because that dirty air will punish you. Yes, it might give you that advantage into turn 1, but it will punish you for the rest of the lap. We do have a Mercedes starting fairly close to the back of one of the Red Bulls, but this is Emma Clay charging down into the first corner, one of the perennial contenders to the throne of the inaugural W1 Sim Series Championship, keeping that tight line, keeping it hooked over to the right-hand side. She's got to find the rhythm, get up to speed as quickly as possible, dance underneath the lights here at the Losail circuit, because once you find that rhythm, this circuit is an absolute joy to drive. As you're using all of the road on the left-hand side, up into the first sector split, through the two double right 90-degree handers, then it's going to be a heavy braking zone. One of the heavier braking zones on the circuit, down into turn 6. Flick the car and get the front end to bite and do what you desire it to do. And now power up towards turn 7. This is where the tyre temperatures are just going to be starting to spike a little bit, and traction, especially in corners like this, 7, 8, and also through turn 10, are going to be very, very dicey.
Exactly, as Emma makes her way through turn 10. And it's a pretty solid run here, and you can take turns 11. Turn 11's flat out. But then turn 12, 13, and 14 is a popular hotspot for track limit violations, so we'll see. Using a good amount of the curve there as she makes her way through, making the run down into turn 15. Got about 20% battery left in the Aston Martin, just going ahead, and there is a Ferrari up in front, which could work. Getting a little bit of tow, getting a little bit of the extra top speed as she makes her way to almost 300 kilometers an hour. A 121.412 is the benchmark at the moment in the session, although I have heard that a 120 might be the pole time that we might see here tonight, as Catherine, the sole V-Carb on the grid here tonight, jumps into P1 with a 121.268. Only just about a tenth and a half ahead of championship contender Emma Clay.
Yeah, just lowering that benchmark by a couple of tenths. We are going to be dipping our toes, you would imagine, into the 1-minute 20s by the time the drivers are warmed up and ready to rock, as Perkins, powering out of the final corner, cuts the beam and slots just inside the top 5, 22 flat. Some very decent bank laps to kickstart the session, it has to be said, although there was a bit of a tete-a-tete, I think, going on through the final corner. Graffo and Haas maybe just getting balked a little bit behind one of the drivers around them. QT Bunny powering through these high-speed right hands. Got to be so committed. Just hope that the car sticks front and rear as we come up towards the second to last corner. I forgot the word penultimate then, but we've suddenly remembered it, and we get through up towards the final corner now in that beautiful Williams car. A little bit better looking than the 26 car, it has to be said, as we power out of the final corner, foot flat to the floor. What is the time going to be? A 24 flat to go just inside the top 10.
A pretty good banker lap there from Cutie Bunny to go ahead and get things started. But one thing that we definitely do know, especially as it gets closer and closer to the end of the session, we know that the track is going to get rubbered in quite nicely, so that there's going to be extra grip on this circuit, and drivers are going to go ahead and try to maximize that one as much as possible. I'm looking on board now with Miss Nutrix here, going ahead and trying to work that Aston Martin around the circuit. Purple sector 1, which is a pretty good sign that there's definitely some solid pace in that Aston Martin tonight. We'll see if she can join her teammate up in the top echelons of our quality session here. Now running through turns 12, 13, and 14. Very high-speed corners, getting really close on the track limits there, almost invalidating that lap. And you really do not want to get an invalid lap here, because that could start a domino effect. And if you can't get a good lap in, then this race may be a bit more difficult than you would have anticipated. Coming down to the DRS, burning the last bit of battery left in Aston Martin. Good enough for P6. Just about 8.5 tenths off of Catherine's pole time.
Very decent lap time there. Somebody with a bit of work to do. The driver in third. Championship leader, let's not forget, Lee Woodward, Sharkstorm. Half a second down on Catherine Thelkins. overall benchmark as things stand, obviously there's still a lot of time left to go in the session to try and lower and get closer to the V-Carb car. Qualifying is all about confidence, all about commitment around a circuit like this. Needs to try and dance between the track limits out there. Rustic Bone going again, improving by a third of a tenth in the first sector. A 30 flat is a very decent first sector time. Can they keep the performance going and the speed up as we go to the second sector split? Are we going to be up? Yes, but not by too much. Still only 600ths of a second. It's not going to be a substantial leap forward, but still just sat inside the top 10. Good opening lap for Heather as well in P9, 23.4. That gives a very, very decent amount of time to work with to try and improve that as the session goes on.
Exactly that, because we know this track is going to get grippier as time goes on. The rubber is going to be put down as these drivers continue to turn laps here in the hot desert, as Stark Loki, the driver I'm on board with now, is making her way through Sector 1.
Ooh.
And, Raccoons disqualified for blocking the pit lane. That's a rare one, but that is definitely not a good start to their night.
Yeah, I didn't catch it. That might have been a series of unfortunate events, maybe just stopping at the end of the pit lane to try and let somebody go through that was powering down into turn 1 and then just getting caught short ever so slightly in the game with an egregious punishment for that minor misdemeanor. Melissa Muller through turn number 10, powering out of it. We've just got the kinks of the final sector left to go. Got to carry as much speed as you dare. 58 flat through sector 1 and sector 2, but a little bit of traffic with the Ferrari in front. You will be feeling that turbulence. The dirty weight coming off the Scarlet car in front of you will just unsettle the car, as will the curves. But getting out of the way on the run up into the final corner and still trying to punch in a decent lap time. Didn't manage to get one on the first attempt in the session, looking to right the wrongs of that first flying lap. It looks like a decent one for Muller out of the final corner. What is it going to be? 22.4. Slots in just a couple of places behind their teammate.
Definitely kicking it into high gear tonight in that kick, Sauber. A pretty good result there, at least in this part of the qualifier. Still definitely room for improvement, but there's also a lot of time for improvement as well. Still about 9 minutes left on the session here as we're just about halfway through this qualifying session here tonight. Few drivers still have yet to set times. Speed Queen in the very, very gorgeous Honda Red Bull Japan livery, making her way through the circuit, coming through the final corner now, coming through turn 16, burning the battery, having a little bit more battery to play with compared to some competitors, but she's up into P3 at the moment, just 2/10 off of Catherine's pole time. Now one of the reserve drivers of Aleti is going ahead and be getting her lap as well. Once again, I'm really keen on seeing how these reserve drivers do, because they are such a dark horse compared to the rest of the field. We'll see if she can will that Williams up close to her teammate, or even ideally ahead of Cutie Bunny here, because the number one metric is always going to be your teammate as she makes her way through the rest of Sector 2.
So the top three have gone again from the first runs, but none of them able to improve as things stand. Clay was down by half a tenth through the first couple of sectors, bailed. Felking also down by half a tenth through Sector 1 and Sector 2. Continuing on with this lap time. Can we lower the benchmark just a little bit more? Yes, fantastic.
Ooh.
Final sector. 21.202, lowers it by 600ths of a second. Problems there for Clay. Problems for Woodward as well, jumping into the pits after invalidating, I believe, out of the final corner. So the lap was thrown in the bin before it had even started. Jess Ball, good first sector, 30.1, up by a couple of tenths on their personal best. Maybe just trying to sneak into the 121s to give themselves a good run at it into the back end of the session.
Yeah, I think we're going to start seeing these top tier lap times as we get closer to the tail end of the session. I did hear that, as we talked about a bit earlier, that a 120 is possible. It is going to be tricky, but a lot of these drivers are going to be in the 121s here tonight, and it's a difficult track. It is not an easy track by any stretch of the imagination, especially when traffic gets involved. Luckily, most of the cars here are spread out pretty far enough. We'll see where Jessica Ball goes. We'll see if it's an improvement. Not quite, just 7,000ths of a second off of an improvement in the Cherry Sakura Red Bull, as there's still one driver yet to set a lap time of Curious Fire in the Haas. Still waiting on them to go ahead and get a lap time in, but there's still time on the board, so there's definitely a lot of time. And some drivers like to wait until that last moment to make a last-ditch effort to really try to get a good time, as Charlotte Perkins improves by over half a second to jump up into P4. And that's a very, very solid result from the kick Sauber.
Yeah, it was pummeling in some punchy sector times there to jump up a couple of places, get comfortably now into the 121s. And this could be tight come the end of the session. It's very easy to find time if you still left it on the table. Once you find that sequence and that flow, when it feels almost around a circle like this where you're almost driving on autopilot, you're not thinking about it, you're just in that groove, in the zone, and you know exactly what the car is going to do. That is the ultimate position you want to find yourself in qualifying. And you've got to be certain that one of the drivers is going to find that at some stage. Miss Nutrix improving by nearly 0.2 per second through sector 1 and through sector 2, playing with the track limits, playing with fire a little bit there through turn 13 and through 15 now, the penultimate corner. Foot flat to the floor out of it, and it's just 16 to deal with. This is where you don't want to make a mistake. Don't throw it away right at the end of the lap. Yes, it's a short drive back to the pits, but we do plant the throttle out of the final corner. Will it be an improvement for the second green machine? Yes. Good final sector, improves by 1/4 of a second, 21.8, now up into the top 6.
Yeah, that was a very good time there for Ms. Nutrix there. Turning up the heat in already a red-hot desert here at Qatar. So very good lap time. And it's always so easy to invalidate there right at that final corner. You do come out at a pretty interesting angle. You do carry a good amount of speed because you want to get a good run on the turn 1 to maximize that top end. So very good job not invalidating it. And even in my time trial earlier, I think I invalidated on that particular turn, like I think 4 times in a row before I actually was able to even start a lap. So very good stuff there. It is a deceptive corner. It's kind of like turn 2 at Bahrain. It's deceptively tricky to kind of navigate, as now we are in the closing stages. We're about to enter what I like to call rush hour when it comes to traffic and qualifying. You're going to see a massive flurry of drivers going through it. Emma jumps up to provisional pole with a 121.168, and we are getting so close to that mystical 120.
Clay steals away provisional pole with just under 5 minutes to go, and the gap is just under 500ths of a second. That looked hooked up, especially in the final sector. Is there still some time on the board for Clay and for Thielking, and crucially for the championship leader Woodward, still down in P5 on a 21.7, is up by 1/4 of a second through the first couple of sectors, needs a little bit more though in the final sector as Rustic Bone goes up to 9th place, 22.6. Here comes the Papaya McLaren powering out of the final corner. It is an improvement by nearly 0.3 of a second and jumps up back onto the second row. Third place as things stand, but still a 1/3 of a second down on the benchmark of Clay.
Yeah, it's still very good stuff. I mean, it's very competitive here, especially with our championship contenders. Pretty much all of our championship contenders are pretty much right at the front of the grid, and that is exactly what you want to see, especially this close to the end of the season. You only got 3 rounds to go, 2 after tonight. And that is a massive run there from Sharkstorm, a bit running off of track limits right at the edge of turn 5. That lap is invalidated, so she'll have to give it another go. But you're running out of time here. Earlier we were saying there's a good amount of time, but time flies when you're flying through the desert. And now you're down to about 3.5, a little under 3.5 minutes in the session. So at this stage, it's going to be make or break here in qualifying. One invalidation could either just absolutely destroy your race or help your race if it's one of your rivals.
All 4 championship protagonists filling the top 4 places provisionally on the grid. 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Here is Heather coming out of turn number 10 through 11. And what is the sector split time? Are we finding time? Yes, a big chunk of it in the middle sector to the tune of nearly half a second. Heather powering now through 11, 12, 13 and 14, trying to carry as much speed as you possibly can. 15, a little bit easier, maybe a bit of a lift off at the apex as you just try and keep the lap time in, keep it within the white lines, and you're attacking 16 with all you can. You can cut the corner on the inside by quite a lot to try and give yourself the best run out of it as we're powering up to the line in the silver arrow. It is an improvement by 0.4 as Heather jumps back up inside the top 10.
I have also just been notified by race control that Alexis, who I believe is Raccoons, will be getting reinstated after that DSQ. Ooh. So their time will be reinstated here tonight. So after that very harsh penalty given earlier for being disqualified for blocking the pit lane, her time will be reinstated, as I was informed by race control. So that's good. At least it's I mean, some of the penalties, especially when it comes to the pit lines, are really, really harsh and really, really tricky. But it's something that drivers got to deal with, as now we're seeing a lot of drivers really trying to give it their all here with less than 2 minutes on the clock here.
Clock ticking down, just over 90 seconds to go. Carl has jumped in the chat. We're delighted to see Mr. Paranik hanging out. Is currently the top 4 in the championship, leading the way, and is the driver second in the standings atop the timing charts, with the championship leader only 4th. Needs to find 4/10 of a second in the final minute or so of the qualifying session. Melanie slightly wide there, didn't trouble the apex through turn 10. Is that going to cost the Scarlet Ferrari on their own delta, up by just 16 milliseconds, and maybe a bit of turbulence and dirty air from the Aston Martin that's just in the distance. That looked to me over track limits, but the FIA haven't seen it, ref, and we're going to carry on through the penultimate corner. Little bit of unstable there on the run into 15 as we power into 16. Just one corner left to go. This is probably the last effort Melanie's going to get. Little bit wide. The car looked a bit cumbersome there, trying to rotate through turn 16. Do we find an improvement? Yes, but it's only P12 on a 23.9. Pole sitter, though, still in the pits. Rebecca Morel is not coming out again. Woodward needs to get her skates on to get round in time, but Clay and Theo King are improving.
There it is.
I told you they are improving. 20.8. There is your 20 lap time.
Yep, there it is. There it is indeed. A rapid lap there from Catherine. Really, once again, turning up the heat here tonight. And it is a very promising thing to see when you are fighting for the inaugural championship title here at W1. Emma Clay now trying to make her way through, one of our championship contenders here. Speed Queen is not going to be able to go out again. She's still in the pits. Her time has run out. Emma now making her way through turns 10 and now running through the high speed turn 11. Good amount, over 50% battery though remaining, so you're definitely going to see a lot of that battery usage through these last couple of corners, running right up to the edge of track limits. We'll see if the Aston Martin can fly into P1. That'll do wonders for her championship efforts. Coming through turn 16, don't invalidate now, you're going to run it close. And close enough indeed, it's going to be burning it to the line. And it's an improvement in time, but not in position. Emma Clay sitting in P3. Charlotte jumps up into the top 4, knocking down the championship leader of Sharkstorm down into P5. Excellent work there from the drivers here tonight to really put in these rapid qualifying laps.
What of the championship leader, though? Still trying to find time right at the death. Clay couldn't get back on top. Neither could Morel, who stayed in the pits. The Williams jumps out of the way, but this could be Woodward. Maybe not even starting on the front 2 rows. Was up by a little bit through the first couple of sectors. The Papaya McLaren charges to the line. The Papaya McLaren improves by a quarter of a second, but it's still only P5 for the championship leader. Jess Ball with a good late lap to go. 6th there, just ahead of Miss Nutrix. Heather inside the top 10 on a very competitive 22.7, just ahead of Cutie Bunny. But the 4 championship protagonists towards the front, but it is Charlotte Perkins, the interloper, in 4th, and Catherine Thielkin leading the charge, the only driver to jump into the 1 minute 20s.
Yeah, we did hear that the 1 minute 20s was possible, and for Catherine, it certainly was. But here's the thing. Qualifying is about getting that one perfect lap, and that perfect lap did come the way of Catherine Thielking, the sole Visa Cash App Racing Bulls here tonight. But here's the thing. If you want to get those sweet points for your championship, you got to get through 29 of them to go ahead and claim all those points here, as we do have our standings up and ready. It is Catherine taking pole position, followed by Speed Queen, Emma Clay, Charlotte Perkins, and Sharkstorm, the last of the championship protagonists. And then it is Jessica Ball, Miss Nutrix, Melissa Mueller, Rustic Bone, Heva, Cutie Bunny, Mayuki Panda, Charlie, and then it is Milani, Stark, Alidi, one of the reserve drivers here tonight, Grafo, and then Curious Fire at the back of the grid, and Raccoons, I think, actually getting reinstated to P10. Ooh. So that will really shake up the order here tonight.
Going to be a big fan of that. But that is qualifying done. 18 minutes now in the past as we focus on the present before the race in the future. And that could have big ramifications for the championship crusade, as Carl loves to say. The beautiful alliteration. It is Woodward leading the way in the championship, remember, by 3 points ahead of Morel. Morel will go from 2nd. Woodward only 5th around a circuit where the configuration makes it hard to overtake. And the driver that's got well, the worst odds in the championship charge. It is Theo King, 125.17 away from the summit, that has taken this qualifying session and maybe the race by the scruff of the neck with that pole position. Everybody could find themselves converging on each other going into the final couple of rounds. This championship battle heating up in the desert. Love it.
And that's exactly what you want from a championship battle, right? I mean, if you look back to like 2023 and such, you know that, I mean, domination isn't exactly the best for viewing spectacle, but you do have some really fun battles as the Grand Prix is underway, but it is going to be the lobby reset beforehand, so nothing that happens here. As funny as it is seeing a bunch of these drivers just straight line the wall like a bunch of rookies on a go-kart track, I can promise you they're going to be a lot better once we come to the actual race itself. Just having a little bit of fun. You know, if you take things too seriously all the time, then where's the fun in that? So we do appreciate a little bit of pre-race demo derby before we get into the actual race here in a few minutes' time.
And we can have a look at who wins the faux start. It looked like it was quite close there between Cutie Bunny and Heather. This is the equivalent of the intermediate pole race, if you know, you know. As we head to load in, who's going to take the faux start? I think it's Heather there with the phone out on the podium. That is the winner of the cancelled race, of course. There, the last person standing is Heather, ahead of Cutie Bunny and Speed Queen Jessica Morel. That's your top three in the pre-race shenanigans, as Victoria so perfectly puts it in the chat. But we'll return to the more civilised driving, I think, is the best way to put it. Heather makes the podium? Absolutely. Strategy-wise, though, we spoke about it a lot in the build-up. Can you make the one-stop work? It's definitely the best way to go. It's definitely quicker, but there is going to have to be some management involved. Dirty air is going to have a cataclysmic effect on the front tyres. You're going to have to try and watch those, be watchful about them, keep your wits about them. And if you can't make the one-stop work, you're going to have to try and find something that does work and find that quickly.
I mean, here's the thing, and safety cars are also going to be a potential factor. I mean, granted, this isn't Monza, this isn't Monaco, this isn't Baku, or one of those other really tight tracks or street circuits that have the walls extremely close by. You said it yourself. I mean, you have so much runoff. I mean, you practically have the whole Sahara Desert worth of gravel between going off any of these corners and any of the walls. We do also have to think about just turn one could potentially be a cause of a safety car. It is a very acute right-hander, and we saw in 2023 George Russell and Lewis Hamilton coming to blows at that particular corner and ending the race pretty early for the 7-time world champion. So turn one is still definitely going to be a bit of a hassle, but I mean, I think it's really just trying to keep your tires in the operating window. And if there is no safety cars, I really do think that the one stop is definitely possible, but it is definitely going to be much easier said than done, especially if you're one of the drivers operating on a controller, because the controller tire wear, speaking from personal experience with the Red Bull controller, it's tough. Tire management is much easier said than done.
Yeah, can't be as precise as you can on a wheel, and that's going to be a big factor. Will we see punctures? We know on the F125 game, the medium tyres are pretty rubbish. For drivers that have gone for the balanced tyre allocation loading in, I fear for you if you don't think the one-stop can work, because you don't really want to be using the medium tyres. The hard tyres are much more malleable compounds, so much nicer to drive on. The risk of overheating is much lower. You can push the limits and the extremities just that little bit more. And the soft tyres, like we mentioned at the very start, you'll be brave to start on them. You'll make up some places early on, but once they start cooking and overheating, you're going to be dropping like a stone very, very quickly. Get rid of those tyres as quickly as you possibly can. We, of course, wait for the drivers to jump back in. We do have this lobby reset, of course, meaning that the soft compound tyres will be returned to them if we're looking at an optimal race strategy. If you are going medium hard around about lap 13, if you can extend those yellow stripe tyres that far, then you jump onto the hard tyres for the remaining 16 laps of the race. That'll round about be the benchmark, and the magic number the drivers are looking for is just whether they can pull it out of a hat.
Yeah, exactly. And with this being the only track in the real world that has a maximum tire stint, I believe it was like 17 laps or so was the max you could take any tire on this track. It is probably the most tire abrasive track, only rivaled by Barcelona. So I think the soft tires are going to be good for being really punchy at the start, but I just don't really see it. I really see that for more like closer towards the back of the grid compared to like the front runners like our 4 championship protagonists and Charlotte, I don't see any of them starting on that soft tire. It's just going to burn out too quickly, and you'd really have to pray for a safety car to really get your money's worth out of those tires. It's going to be borderline impossible to really make them get to that lap 13 kind of golden zone that you were talking about.
Yeah, it leaves you with such little flexibility, doesn't it? Because you have to make that early stop. You're either extending the hard stint so far that it's going to be challenging, let's say, or you're locking yourself into the 2-stop, which is on paper and on tarmac probably as well the slower strategy compared to the 1-stop. So there's so many dynamics at play and so many things the drivers will have to think about and consider as they power around the 29 laps of this circuit. The timing clock is coming up. I can see the green ticks appearing once again. We're not far away from getting started for the third last round of the season. Before we jump in, let's have a quick look at the future, where we're going to be heading in the final couple of weeks of this series. We stay in the Middle East. We go from Qatar to Abu Dhabi, the Yas Marina circuit, in a week's time, and then ending on the hallowed Brazilian bitumen of Interlagos, round number 10, with some rain in the air, with strategies up in the air as well. Those are 2 very, very interesting races, 2 classic races to round out a championship campaign.
Exactly. We got to mix up modern and classic. The modern season finale of Abu Dhabi versus the absolute cinema of a track that is Interlagos. And with the rain, tire management is going to be pretty crucial there too, because you were talking about how rubbish the medium tires were. The intermediates are practically made out of paper mache. Granted, as fun as it would be to see a Qatar rain race, which I have done once, yeah, you're not going to see intermediate tires here in the desert unless somebody fully channels their inner, like, early 2020s Ferrari, but I severely doubt we're going to see that here tonight. I think we're going to see pure cinema on the Losail International Circuit. Going to be an absolute fireworks show of a race here tonight.
I have my fingers crossed for rain that I don't think any of us think is going to arrive, and we have it confirmed there. There is, of course, going to be no rain at the start of this race. But we will have to reapply the setups, of course, with the lobby reset going on. We also need to choose what tyre strategy we're going for. Do you lock yourself into the conservative 2-stop strategy, or is it the aggressive 1-stop that might leave you puncturing and blowing up a couple of tyres, but is definitely the faster way to go? Fuel you've got to be careful of. Setup dynamics as well. Got to be careful of the aero wings that you're running. If you've gone for high downforce in qualifying, you're going to be in a good position out of the blocks, but you could be tumbling like a stone, getting gobbled up very, very quickly in those opening few laps. For everybody that is watching, as I said before, thank you for spending a couple of hours with us to watch some supreme sim racing action. Who do you think takes it? Who do you think takes the victory in 29 laps time? Who are you supporting as well? Let us know who you're going to be repping in the chat as we wait. The anticipation builds, as it always does, for the drivers to get set, to get onto those starting blocks.
It's gonna be such a tough race to predict as well, because when you do a lobby reset, sometimes the mental game kind of shifts a bit, and racing is equally as mental as it is physical, especially when you are locked in such a tight championship battle. Your mind is going to be running overtime, but channeling that into pace is going to be extremely important. You really got to keep it clean through turn 1. There's been multiple accidents in various different, in F1 sim racing and as well as the real world. A lot of accidents can happen in that turn 1, especially on the opening lap. You got 19 cars trying to fit into one corner. It can be difficult, but I think whoever nails the start has a really good shot of taking victory here tonight.
100%. It's not the longest of runs down into turn number 1, but you've got to get your braking right. And it's also not the heaviest of braking zones either into turn 1, but it flows back into turn 2. You don't want to find yourself out of position, because then you're going to get gobbled up by drivers that are nipping at your heels, sensing for any which way, any opportunity to try and pick up a freebie on the opening lap in particular. Will it be 2x2? Will it be single file through turns 4 and 5? That double 90-degree right-hander, and then the run into turn 6 to start the middle sector, where the dirty air will really start kicking in, and the drivers you'd expect will begin to fan out. Wait and see, though, what will happen. I think in the chat, that French Oba, I hope I'm saying that right. How can you rep only one person? I absolutely concur, my friend. Supporting many people out there. Who are the number of people you're supporting? I mean, maybe not say if it's 15 drivers, that might be quite difficult to get into one Twitch message, but are we supporting everybody? Of course we're supporting everybody. We're hoping for an absolute barnstormer. A duel in the dusk of the desert will be coming shortly, because first and foremost, we have the safety car? Not the safety car. The formation lap to get those tyres up to temperature. You don't want to be starting with cold tyres as we get ready to rock with Velking leading them away. Championship leader, only P5.
Yeah, taking a look at the tire compounds that these drivers are starting on, only one driver, the driver who was DSQ'd earlier on, who has since been reinstated into that P10 position. Raccoons is the only one running that soft tire. So she's definitely looking to make some massive moves at the start here. A majority of the field running on the mediums. You got a few outliers running on the hard tires. Some drivers have immediately teleported straight back to the line. And it may say DSQ on the screen, but ignore that. That's not accurate. They haven't actually been DSQ. They've just been sent to the start line here as the drivers make their way through, continuing to build up some heat in those tires, trying to get up to the optimal temperature, because especially on the start, you do not want cold tires, because if you have cold tires and the driver next to you has perfectly optimized temperature tires, then you're basically a sitting duck as we make our way down into turn 1.
Especially on the hard compound tyres. And I love that we have some divergence, especially at the sharp end. 50% inside the top 6, going for the yellow walled mediums, the other going for the white walled hard tyres, with Raccoons on the softs, and I'm a big fan of that one as well. That's going to be an exciting one. Watch out for a particularly punchy Silver Arrow perhaps in the opening salvos of this 29 lap race. We'll also see as well here who is unable to park efficiently. That's an important one. You want every single millimetre possible in that grid box. As the pole sitter, Catherine Velking, does park sufficiently. The championship protagonist lining up in first, second, third and fifth, with Charlotte Perkins potentially the joker in this championship battle, with the 4 aces surrounding the Kick Sauber driver. Perkins has failed to park efficiently and will be disqualified on that one. 4 championship contenders though, 1 desert arena, and we will await the 5 red lights to kickstart 29 laps of dicing. A duel in the dusk of the desert on the run down to turn 1. And after a very, very long hold, we are racing in Qatar. Velking on the right. Speed Queen, not a particularly good getaway. Clay gets out of the blocks like a shot, immediately covered by the pole sitter over to the inside. Clay has to get out of it, and holding it around the outside goes Velking, but a big, big armful of opposite lock. Massive snap. Almost had a swap on, but the RB keeps it just about pointing on the straight and narrow. Look at Raccoons on the soft compound tyres. Halved her grid position from 10th up inside the top 5 as the championship leader Woodward pushed down into 6th place, grappling for grip on the hard compound tyres. Jess Ball wider, Williams, a cutie bunny, running off the road as well. Heather losing a few places also in the opening exchanges of this 29 laps race.
Some positions are being swapped to the midfield as well, as Miyuki Panda is going to trade some positions here. Star Loki making some positions, and Charlie, I think, has had a bit of a rough go of things, losing 2 positions in one corner, now being hounded by the Haas. And oh, Star Loki has touched a little bit of gravel there, and Stark Loki has fallen down the order in the Alpine, down into P17. But taking a look back up into our top 5, and Raccoons is up in the P4 after a rocket ship of a launch. That Silver Arrow was notched perfectly, and she got a rapid launch, putting those soft tires to very good use here, as she is chasing down one of the championship protagonists in the Red Bull. Speed Queen hoping that the Red Bull is going to give her wings, because that Silver Arrow is flying true here tonight, using a good amount of the runoff, trying to build a good amount of slipstream, but being patient, trying to play it brave on the brakes. Brave on the brakes goes Raccoons, and up in the P3 goes the Silver Arrows. That is about 7 positions off the start here. What a rapid first opening lap for the Mercedes driver.
On the button immediately. Soft compound tyres have fired up to some tune as the top 2 in the championship pushed down to 4th and 6th respectively. Perkins didn't get a particularly good start either, probably courtesy of that infraction there, missing the grid spot, being pushed slightly further back. Muller all underneath the rear wing of the McLaren of Sharkstorm. That is Lee Woodward, the championship leader, who's a little bit wide there on the entry, but gets a lovely run through late apex and will keep the Sauber in a back pocket for the time being. Jess Ball just trying to cling onto the coattails of this little skirmish. Is Woodward trying to apply the blowtorch to Perkins in front. Doesn't necessarily need to make this move at this stage with the medium tyres. They will be in the ascendancy for the first few laps of this opening stint. Then the crossover period will arrive. Raccoon still hanging on there, second off the back of Clay, but be watchful for the Silver Arrow. Those soft compound tyres are going to burn up and bubble away very, very quickly, and that is going to create quite the cork in the bottle that the two championship protagonists behind the Mercedes are going to want to clear very, very sharpishly.
If Raccoons can stay within the DRS range of Emma and Catherine, then she's going to be a massive headache for these two championship protagonists, because she is still, I mean, in these opening laps, those soft tires are going to be rapid. Granted, they are going to fall away much quicker than the mediums and the hards will, but when it comes to a race like this, especially after the kind of rough start that you had with the DSQ, although it was reinstated, I mean, that's the thing you want with these soft tires. You want to be punchy. You want to make the most of it. And here's the thing, even when those soft tires do inevitably fall away, if she can play good defense, then Raccoons is going to be a massive headache to championship leader, who is currently down in P6, and everybody directly behind her. But she is putting on some massive pressure to Emma Clay, who was trying to stay close to Catherine, but Catherine pulling away as the Silver Arrows gets the bullseye straight into P2. That Silver Arrow is on a tear here tonight in the desert. Desert heat is not going to stop that Silver Arrow.
Turning up the heat, though, on the championship protagonist from 10th to 2nd in just under 3 laps of racing. An audacious lunge down the inside of turn 10 as well. That is exceptional from Raccoons, especially after the misery of the unfair disqualification in qualifying. Maybe could have started higher than 10th. Maybe could be in the lead of the race. But Thelking is checked out in the lead. 2.1 seconds clear of Raccoons. Last week we had the pole position curse ended finally. And this could be Thelking making it back-to-back pole sitters, going from lights to flag to take it. Clay with the DRS on the run down into the first braking zone, but not close enough to make an impression. But is Perkins moving forward? Jessica Morel dropping back behind the kick Sauber, back up into P4 for Perkins, where they started on the grid. Those hard tyres clearly haven't fired up yet for the Red Bull or for the McLaren, and the top two in the championship might now be getting embroiled and battling over the same piece of tarmac.
Yeah, and if these two keep fighting like this, I mean, they're going to obviously try to maximize getting as many points as humanly possible, but they're going to even lose more ground to the guy or gals up ahead. With Emma, Raccoons, and Thelking, they're going to just continue to run away with this one if these drivers just keep battling it out like this. I mean, you love to see battles, but in terms of things, I mean, you already got Thelking already about 2 seconds ahead. Charlotte is already a 1.5 seconds off of Emma. So, I mean, even if you do manage to get past the kick Sauber, if you're a Speed Queen or Shark Storm, you're going to be in a very, very rough position, because you're not going to be in that DRS range. And especially with this regulation of the car, being in that DRS range is so crucial, because it really just hurts any chance of trying to catch up to anybody ahead if you are not within that DRS range. And McClay now, and actually Raccoons is into the pits already, so making a strong start, but not even getting to 5 laps on those softs. So very punchy there. I think we're going to see Raccoons jump onto the hard tires. Yep, sure enough, the white wall tires are getting put onto the Silver Arrows. And away she goes. Very interesting strategy there.
That's I can kind of understand why you're doing it. You don't want to hit the cliff with those soft compound tyres. Had a really, really good start. Don't want to throw that away by tumbling through the field when you're basically driving on the rims of the red walled rubber. Miyuki, Panda and Heather were going at it, hammering Tong on the previous lap. Good run for the Mercedes there coming out of turn 3. On the run into 4, do we dangle the nose? Not quite down the inside of the McLaren. Into turn 4, trying to stick like glue to the back of the Papaya and Chrome car. Opportunity maybe if you're brave under brakes into turn 6, but it's actually Heather locking the inside front. And that will just cool that charge for the time being, with Rustic Bone in the Alpine just over a second now ahead. Heather will be liking that, hoping and praying that the McLaren will drop outside the 1 second window, and then it'll be an elementary pass down the start finish straight with helping out of the DRS.
The DRS can be very strong, especially if you're running one of those higher speed setups. So, I mean, trying to get close to really trying to maximize the potential of getting that move done is going to be crucial for Heva, as she is trying to chase down this Papaya machine, trying to get any kind of purchase, any kind of position, trying to fly as true as her teammate did a bit earlier on, as Heva makes her way down, coming into turn 16. If you get a good one here, the Alpine has a bit of a snap there.
And Heather drops it in the back of shot as
spin.
well. Half spinning round the final corner, just trying to chase after Miyuki Panda. He'll pick up a freebie there after the little bit of contact between the Williams and the Alpine of Cutie Bunny and Rustic Bone. Bone still maybe thinking about it to the outside of turn 1. The space didn't present itself, but won't be under any pressure courtesy of that little whoopsie there from Heather out of the final corner. Has managed to keep it in position number 12 and only lost 3 seconds. Did well to save it actually, because with the weight of these cars, you can very easily loop it all the way round and find yourself pointing in the wrong direction. But now needs to try and chase back after the little trio that have formed in front with Miss Nutrix, who got past Miyuki Panda a couple of laps ago. Now 4.5 seconds up the road.
Yeah, I mean, you really want to try to catch this pack here, but you also want to really just try to maximize as many points as you can, because all these drivers here aren't mathematically in championship contention anymore. So now it's at a point where you're just trying to do the best to kind of fight with the drivers around you for those points, for those positions in the championship. As now Charlotte is still about 1.5 seconds away from Emma Clay. And I'm kind of still keeping an eye on Raccoons, who is definitely probably got the best pace on the field here tonight on those brand new hards, making quick work of the 2 Haas cars and the Alpine of Stark Loki, as Raccoons is already back up into P14 on those hard tires. Now the question is, are you going to try to get to the end on this hard tire compound? Not likely. So at what lap? And actually the question now becomes, if you are Raccoons, do you go back to the soft tire after these hards are done, or do you go for the trifecta and just jump on a set of mediums? Very curious on the strategy here. Probably the most interesting strategy of the bunch here tonight.
Yeah, I think the position that Raccoons has found themselves in, probably the only driver that could try and make a 2-stop strategy where it definitely won't be going to the end of the race. That's nearly 25 laps on a set of hard compound tyres. That would be difficult, I would suggest. Heather and Charlie battling away, going hammer and tong. Over 12th and 13th position. It's the Mercedes that wins the battle between Silver and Scarlet. Charlie still in the back pocket of Heather, who's still running nicely in P12, but like we saw with that mistake on the previous lap, just dropping 3 seconds to the group in front, who are still in the order that they were. Cutie Bunny from Miyuki Panda, from Rustic Bone. And then it's this duo with Raccoons, the teammate, of course, of Heather, catching very, very quickly. Nearly 4 seconds taken out of this duo on the lap. That is the difference and the delta and the tyre offset that Raccoons has got on those hard compound tyres, the brand new hard compound tyres, charging up to the back of this battle.
And we see the first track limit violation penalty being given out to Grafo. 3 seconds of a time penalty there. And unlike the 10-second ones that you can get, this one is not servable in the pit. So that one is just going to be hanging over your head for the remainder of the Grand Prix, and it will show in the results. But I got a feeling that it is going to be the first of many, because this track really does not like to play nice with track limits. We saw a good amount of invalidations earlier in quali, and I feel like, especially as some of these drivers are starting to lose the grip on the medium tires as the crossover point is approaching, that we're going to see some drivers just kind of lose it a bit. And you got the dirty air plus the tire fall off is not exactly a good combination for keeping it within the white lines here. But, I mean, it could become a massive epidemic where we start seeing a few different track limit penalties just spawn across the field here tonight, as we do have Speed Queen trying to chase down Charlotte for that final spot in the podium. But there is a massive chasm between them and the top two, particularly between P1 and P2.
Oh, we got contact, so we've got a Ferrari of Charlie round, batting away with Raccoons. Raccoons trying to muscle through on the brand new rubber. I think the Ferrari just understeering into the side pod of the Mercedes through turn 7, looping it round and dropping over 7 seconds. That will ease some of the pressure on Heather, as those two were still battling very, very hard. But just a little bit of a mistake there, just a little bit of rubbing is racing. And the Ferrari most definitely coming off second best in that altercation. Now we'll start Loki to deal with. Miyuki Panda got the better of Cutie Bunny on the previous lap. I wonder if the Mercedes-powered Williams just starting to struggle with those medium compound tyres, compared, of course, to their Mercedes engine counterpart that has just blasted off into the distance and dropped the Williams out of the 1 second window. Is Rustic Bone close enough here to make the move into turn 1 with the help of Anna DRS? Gaining, but won't be close enough to make that move, as the two Silver Arrows are going to swap places. Raccoons allowed through by Heather to try and chase after the group in front and make this undercut work.
I think undercut's a bit of an understatement there, but it is still very true that this undercut has pretty much worked wonders. I think the whole strategy for Raccoons has worked wonders here. That Silver Arrows is really on the ball, and it really just gives you the sense of what if that DSQ didn't happen. She could very well be leading this entire race, but now she's got to focus on the here and now, trying to chase down Rustic and Cutie Bunny, the Alpine and Williams, and they're probably close to hitting that crossover point where even if you started on the same lap on the hard tires, you'd be in a bit of a better spot. With the fresher hard tires, really the optimal tire at this stage of the Grand Prix, as we're on lap 10 out of 29 here in the desert, as now is going to be Raccoons really trying to close in the gap, getting a little bit squirrely, and oh, look at that, Rustic Bone going a bit into the runoff, and that's going to be an easy move around the outside. That Silver Arrow is still flying extremely well here tonight, and honestly, I think if she did start closer to the front, she might very well be in the lead of this race already, or at minimum challenging for a podium spot.
Absolutely motoring. Are we going to try the move into turn one? Haven't quite got the overspeed. The problem with the discussion of Raccoons being in the lead is that Catherine Thelkin in the opening 9 or so laps has been absolutely masterful. 5.5 seconds the gap nearly over Clay in second position, comes into this championship battle at the end of the season in the worst place as Raccoons to the inside of 4 will dispossess Cutie Bunny in position 11, or position 10 I should say, punches the Williams down to 11th. But Thilkin with the worst odds are trying to take this championship, but with a domineering display like this, head and shoulders above the rest on the medium tyres as things stand. We'll see how things pan out once we jump onto the hard tyres in the second half of this race. But been absolutely bulletproof so far. We haven't mentioned them because it's just been so comfortable out front.
Yeah, typically, if you're not mentioned on the broadcast, you are either in no man's land or really far ahead where you're not even really being troubled by anyone. And that latter statement is where Catherine finds herself at this stage of the Grand Prix, just miles ahead, almost now 6 seconds ahead in that Miami Edition B-Carb. I mean, you said it best. I mean, just pretty much untouchable now at this stage. But we are getting close to that pit window that you were talking about. It is expected to be around laps, I'm going to say about 12 to 15 at the absolute most. Probably lap 13, like you said earlier. It is probably going to be the lap that we're going to see these drivers pit in on. If you're on the medium compound, you can probably extend it a bit further. On the hards, maybe to about between a range of lap 17 to lap 19, give or take. But, I mean, once again, if you can have pace on the mediums, but if you do not have pace on the hards, then it can be very difficult to keep that lead. But considering the gap that is right at 6 seconds right now for Catherine, I think even if the pace isn't as strong on these hard compound tires when she does make the stop, I think she's given herself enough of a buffer where it's going to be really just a minor factor in the entire grand scheme of this Qatar Grand Prix.
I think we're also starting to see Morel and Woodward, 4th and 5th, just start to up the wick a little bit, up the tempo, push Perkins towards Clay in front as the hard tyres now definitely in the ascendancy. As you can see in the background there, the second Sauber of Muller getting shot of the medium tyres. That should be hard to the end of the race. Going to be a long stint, but should be able to make it work. As Jess Ball coming through in position number 6, I think lapping one of the Ferraris of Melanie, yes, jumping up past the Ferrari on the straight, and a helpful bit of DRS there, maybe to try and close up to the group in front, but that gap still sits at just under 6 seconds. Further back in the lower reaches, just outside the top 10 in factors. We'll wait to see where Muller is spat out of the pits. Cutie Bunny, Rustic Bone, Heather still battling over 11th, 12th and 13th. There might be another person joining this battle, as you could just see Muller there trundling down pit lane exit. Are they going to be spat out in the middle? Heather's just got to be careful because the Saab was there on the inside, but does just leave the space. Didn't matter anyway because Muller, I think, was just behind. But now these drivers, the shoes could be on the other foot. They're going to have to watch and wait and be careful for the powering Sauber on the brand new hard tyres, trying to blast their way through. And this doesn't work for Muller's undercut either. Undercut attempt on some of the drivers in front, most notably her teammate Charlotte Perkins.
And we saw how strong these new hard tires could be. I mean, we saw it with Raccoons earlier, and we're probably going to see some really good pace, and we're seeing flashes of that pace as Melissa Muller does get past Heva, and now already looking at getting another one as Rustic Bone goes deep, goes a bit off the track there, going a bit into the blue runoff there, and that is going to be 2 positions already gained in about half a lap This is crucial. Championship leader, 3-second time penalty. That has just changed the dynamic of this entire championship battle commencing here in Qatar. That is
100%.
definitely not what you wanted to see for the McLaren.
Look at this, though, coming out of the pits. This is Catherine Thielking. How big is the undercut for Raccoons? 8 laps on the hard tyres. Hasn't managed to get ahead of the runaway race leader, but will be ahead of the green machine of Emma Clay. Remember, Raccoons still with a pit stop to make. As we wait to see Muller in the background, but that undercut has not worked. Just caught in the crossfires and the traffic that was coming through. Now 5 seconds off the back of Perkins and Clay, who are in a little bit of no man's land here at the moment with Miyuki Panda still yet to stop on the medium compound tyres, a second and a half back down the road. And then 5.5 seconds to Raccoons, who is going to be a lot slower at this stage. Yes, those hard tyres won't be on the rims just yet, but they will be past their best after 8 laps around this configuration of circuit. Maybe we're going to try and get another 10 out of them and potentially go back to the soft tyres, as you alluded to earlier, although it'll be interesting to see how that works. Rustic Bone does take on the red striped soft compound tyres, an interesting one there with 16 laps still remaining. But out in front, Thielking has just been so strong out in front. A bulletproof display so far as we're approaching the 50% distance. Got to keep the foot flat to the floor, though, in the second half of this race.
Yeah, because you're only halfway there. If you lose focus now, I mean, you're not going to get all the points for completing half the race, so you still need to lock in and get the rest of this race done. But yeah, like you said, a very strong performance here from Catherine. Pretty much nigh flawless here. But Raccoons is also still kind of waiting in the wings. Those hard tires might have fired up already for Catherine at this stage. So Catherine will have the better grip coming into this lap, coming into lap 14, as we are right on the precipice of the 50% mark. But Raccoons is in prime position to capitalize if Catherine does make the mistake here tonight. It seems unlikely considering how dialed in that Visa Cash Out Racing Bull is. But, I mean, we said it earlier. Anything can happen in racing. The only predictable thing about motorsports is that it is unpredictable by nature. As now we see the net race leader just right behind Melanie, the lapped Ferrari. And the lap Ferrari will definitely hold her up just a smidge. But she'll get on through past the ghosted Scarlet car. And she will be back in the clear air and ready to try to make the most of these opening laps on this fresh stint.
We're interested to see how things have fanned out. Emma Clay and Charlotte Perkins still joined at the hip in 6th and 7th on the road. But they are nearly 8 seconds, very nearly 8 seconds off the back of the runaway race leader, Catherine Thielking, who's continuing to just soldier on out in front and put in lap after lap after lap that is competitive, consistent, controlled, assured, all the superlatives that you can throw out there. Top 2 in the championship still powering around on their hard compound tyres. They'll be in the pits, you would imagine, in the next 2 to 3 laps to strap on the mediums for the second half of their race. As we're watching Rustic Bone on the soft compound tyre, going to be rapid for the next few laps, but we saw with Raccoons, the tyres do fall off quite quickly. Perkins has actually managed to get ahead of Emma Clay. That's on the run into turn number 1. The majority of the opening stint, Perkins was fairly happy just to sit behind the Aston Martin, but now deciding the time is to move forward, putting the green machine in the back pocket of the lime green Sauber, and maybe try and take some time out of Raccoons. And they haven't really made any real impression on the Mercedes in front. Raccoons still lapping very competitively.
Yeah, Charlotte is going to do whatever she can to kick the Aston Martin down a position and maybe try to kick on and try to go after the Mercedes. But that Mercedes has had some really good pace, but on 8-lap older tires. So we do know that Raccoon still needs to pit in. Still going to be curious to see what tire compound is going to be the selected option. What do you all think in the chat? Do you think Raccoon is going to switch to the mediums or the softs? Let us know in the chat down below. I'm actually going to go with a wildcard prediction and say that Raccoons is going to actually jump on another set of soft tires, considering the amount of pace. And Emma Clay, another championship contender, getting that 3-second time penalty for track limit violations. This is sounding really good for all the Red Bull affiliated cars that are in tonight's race. For Speed Queen, for Jessica Ball, and Catherine Thielking. Those penalties are music to their ears.
100%. Going to make life a little bit easier for Perkins as well. Raccoons potentially, as Perkins is just starting to take chunks of time out of the silver arrow, getting through the lap. Scarlet Ferrari, if that is Melanie, still in 19th position. Two leaders continue to soldier on. 8 seconds clear of Jess Ball, who's a further 2.5 ahead of the net race leader. Raccoons is now starting to drop time. Those hard compound tyres, second best at this stage. When do you jump into the pits, though? The first question is the tyres you go on. The second question is how late do you leave it? Because you want to give yourself enough time to work your way back through the traffic. There is a lovely gap that you could filter out in between Miss Nutrix in 9th and Miyuki Pan in 10th. That is 23 seconds. You'd be fairly certain to say that Raccoons will slot into that gap and then try and punch through the rest of the field in the latter stage. It's going to be like a live wire you would expect in the final 10 laps.
One of the great mistakes that I made as a child was telling my teacher that racing does not involve math whatsoever. You really need to calculate where you're going to come out here in this order when you do make your pit stops. And we see Sharkstorm, the first of the starting hard runners, coming into the pits now in that McLaren, going ahead and swapping to the yellow walled mediums is probably what everybody who started off on the hard tire is likely going to do, unless they are hyper-extending that stint, which is possible. I mean, Speed Queen might try to bring it to the last couple of laps, but here's the thing. When we saw from Raccoons earlier, there's a caution in Sector 1. It is the Ferrari of Charlie now going a bit off course there, just on the exit of turn 6. But that's unfortunate there. The Scarlet cars are really just not having that great of a time here tonight, unfortunately. But you are going to just generally have those bad races from time to time. Back onto the other topic of the soft tires, though. As fast as Raccoons was on those soft tires, that Mercedes only got about 5 laps out of those tires before coming in and switching to the set of hards that they're currently on. And actually, Raccoons has actually went for another set of hard tires, so she made a pit stop. I missed it, and I guess both of our predictions were wrong.
Yes, I'm surprised maybe that Raccoons went that early. Maybe could have left it a little bit more, but obviously deciding that they couldn't find any more pace on those hard compound tyres and trying to drop into the same kind of race as Jess Ball, who's in front, albeit on the medium compound tyres. Miss Nutrix as well, who is a few seconds up the road. Still an opportunity for Raccoons to maybe get inside the top 5, especially if they don't exceed track limits for now until the end of the 29-lap Qatar Grand Prix. There's definitely an opportunity with some penalties being handed out. Clay up to the back of Perkins into turn 1. They're over 9 seconds now off the back of Theo King, who continues to just march away lap after lap. Nobody can hold a candle to the Racing Bulls at this stage, as looking signed, sealed and delivered, even with 10 laps to go. With Woodward, the championship leader, charging up to the back of Perkins, to the back of Clay, taking 1.3 seconds out of that duo on the previous lap. Muller's quickly going to be falling into the clutches of the Red Bull of Speed Queen as well, who's just jumped out of the pits a lap later than Woodward to get on their medium tyres to go to the end of the race. So the top two in the championship, Woodward and Morel, both on the offensive in the latter stages of this race.
And they're going to have to go on the offensive, especially if you're Woodward, who has that 3-second time penalty. Because if she falls closer to Melissa, then that is going to be another position lost. The more points lost to Emma, to Catherine, to the other championship protagonist here. The only one that she won't lose points out to is Speed Queen, currently in P6 at the moment. But Sharkstorm looking really strong on that set of mediums, really trying to push it and closing in the gap. Already knocked off about a second to Emma Clay up the road, who is locked into a very tight battle. Miss Nutrix, talking about one Aston Martin to another, gets a 3-second time penalty. So 4 drivers here on the night with those track limit violations as we get closer to the final 10 laps of this Qatar Grand Prix. And strategy has played such a huge factor tonight, hasn't it?
100%. It's been really interesting to see the divergence as Morel with a late dart there over to the middle of the circuit to dispossess Muller of P5. No penalty for Morel. That could prove crucial if, and it's a big if, she can catch up to Woodward in front. That gap is 5 seconds though after just a 1-lap undercut for the Papaya McLaren car, who's very quickly taking even more chunks, bigger chunks of time out of Perkins and Clay. Punched in the fastest lap on the previous tour, making the duo in front in particular purple with anxiety, with McLaren looming large now in the mirrors of the green machine. with Speed Queen Morel a further 5.6, 5.7 seconds down the road. For Perkins, it'll be a case of try and finish this race on the podium. 2 drivers behind with penalties is Morel that they need to worry about. Potentially, though, Woodward, if that McLaren can drop the time, get through this duo, and then drop over 3 seconds. We don't know how many other warning Shark Storm is on. Same does go for Perkins, of course, though, as well. And Raccoons is going to be picking up places, you would imagine. 2 missed Nutris with the penalty and older tyres. Maybe can try and catch up to Muller with 5-lap fresher tyres. I feel like that's a bit of a long shot, and the battle should be between Muller and Ball, you would expect, for 6th and 7th. And now onto the start-finish straight. Perkins, Clay, Woodward, all equidistant, and the 2 at the back with the DRS, of course.
Yeah, things are really going to get super spicy here towards the end of the race. The heat is going to be constantly ramped up. And now here's the thing about this battle for P3 at the moment, the final spot on the podium as they get past the lapped Scarlet Ferrari, is that both Emma and Shark have the same penalty. So whoever finishes the position out of those 2 is just going to get that position, unless one of them picks up another 3-second penalty, which isn't exactly out of the realm of possibility. As speaking of penalties, Rustic Bone gets a 3-second penalty, so the Alpine is going to join the club. Still nobody at 6 seconds.
Under pressure is Woodward to the inside, side by side. Clay versus Woodward. Round 1 goes to the Aston Martin. Just tried to sneak up the inside of turn 7. Woodward spotted the smallest of gaps to slide the McLaren alongside. Couldn't quite pick the pocket of the Aston Martin. An unregulationary place to overtake. Now stuck like glue to the back of the Aston. Through turns 11, 12, 13. Bit of a tail snap there for Clay. Pushing hard, rear tyres starting to overheat perhaps as well. But Woodward just calling that assault, just falling back to the tune of half a second. Ready to go again, potentially on the run into turn 1 if the McLaren has the battery saved up to blast past the Aston Martin. Can we get a good run out of the final corner? It's actually Clay with the better traction just to open the gap up ever so slightly. I think for the time being, Woodward is just going to sit and watch and wait and retain the status quo in 4th position in this train, helped by the fact that Morel not really catchy, was only about half a second quicker on the previous lap. Clay sliding wide, the door was open, but Woodward couldn't quite blunder through it. But now sliding wide again is Clay, a little bit all over the place on all the wrong parts of the racetrack. Defensive driving in their mirrors to the inside of 4 invites the opportunity for Woodward to sail around the outside. We go for the cutback again. Woodward just chopping off turn 5. Excellent run though to the outside again. It's Clay on the inside. Going to try and keep their foot in it to the left-hand side. Good run though on the medium tyres out of turn 6. And that is finally the move done for Woodward. Championship leader with a penalty, but that won't hold them back as a big slide for Perkins in front.
It doesn't matter how many times Emma tried to slam the door shut on Sharkstorm. She blew it open with a breaching charge, and now the championship leader up into P3. Damage limitation is going to be the name of her game here tonight. She wants to minimize the points lost to the dominant Catherine, who has absolutely just run away with this one here tonight in the desert. But that is a very, very good consistency, very good show of patience for the Papaya car. Just lining it up, waiting for it to move. And I think even a bit of a snap there. Coming out of turn 16, which might bring Emma back into the fray as these drivers are going to continue to duel out here under the floodlights in the scorching hot desert. As now we're going to see Emma Clay really try to pick up the pieces. But at this stage, I mean, the championship leader is on the better tires, and she's already not even thinking about Emma Clay at this point. She's thinking about trying to take on Charlotte, trying to take on the Kick Sauber, and trying to knock the Sauber down a spot. And once again, on those 5-lap old medium tires, they are the optimal tire to be on in this battle right now. A few drivers a bit further down the order switching to the softs. Sharkstorm really trying to look for it. A bit of a snap there from Charlotte. Just trying to line up the pass, looking for any kind of gap. Charlotte closing the door. She doesn't want any Girl Scout cookies. She wants to keep that P2 under lock and key, but it is going to be so difficult when you have somebody with such a massive tire advantage. And now if you are the championship leader, you are just going to go ahead and do exactly what you did to Emma Clay. Just bide your time, wait for the opportunity, and start picking people up one by one. And there's another penalty going the way of Charlotte. So now, even though she was likely to lose the position on track anyway, she could have regained it due to Woodward's points, but penalties, I mean. But now with equal penalty, it is an equal playing field as we see a dive into turn 1, trying to find it. Are we going to see a rinse and repeat of what happened to the Aston Martin? It looks like Charlotte might be a bit better on the defense here this go-around, but I think that McLaren's going to get through sooner rather than later.
Perkins defending very, very well. The attention will now turn to Morel in P5. Only 4 seconds off the back of this group now. And with penalties for all 3 of them, as just a little bit deep into turn 6 was Woodward. Perkins had it covered, has had it covered for the last couple of laps, driving very, very well with a defensive game plan against the Papaya McLaren behind. Clay just watching and waiting, maybe trying to pick up the scraps from any skirmishes that occur in front. 12 seconds, the margin that Thielking has out in front, can just cruise to the flag you would expect and make sure those tyres don't go pop in the closing stages. Sauber, McLaren, Aston Martin. Heather picks up a 3-second penalty for corner cutting, still embroiled with a battle for 11th with Cutie Bunny. Yellow flag is out. That might be Heather actually through turn 1 with a bit of a wobble.
There's a spin! Alidi had a spin coming through turn 7. So a few spins here, and that is on those 3-lap-old soft tires. So some of these soft runners are already cooking their tires better than a Texas barbecue.
Woodward again though, with the DRS up to the back of Perkins. 6 laps to go here in Qatar. Do we go defensive again? Are we going to hover in the middle of the circuit? Late dart to the inside.
Whoa.
Couldn't quite stop it quick enough, but a love tap to the back as Woodward saying, come on, get on with it. Perkins a little bit slow at the apex, but I think has just managed to back the McLaren up enough. Good run out of turn 3 to maybe challenge into 4 and 5, but still not close enough. Woodward can't make this work. Perkins defending incredibly well, and we're approaching the point where those medium tyres are going to be second hand, and will the turns table, if you will, and the hard tyres will be slightly better. Big snap for Perkins though coming out of turn 6, still very much on the defensive under the cosh as this to the outside goes. Woodward trying to find the overlap with Perkins just a little bit caught short here by the back markers turning the ARS up. You don't want to do that when you're under the microscope, but into turn 10 we'll still have this one covered.
Very good defensive driving there from Charlotte. I mean, making the championship leader, Lee Woodward, really just work for that position as the Papaya machine is trying to channel that pace, that the last bit of pace that those medium tires have left. I think that pace might start to fall away now as we have hit that crossover point. Now, what was once the inopportune tire of the hards are now starting to come into their own. With about 5 laps to go left in the Grand Prix, soon to be about 4 left as we're in the final 5 of the Grand Prix. Emma Clay now looking really close, looking for a move up the inside, trying to return the center of the move that was done to her a few laps prior. But the defense from Sharkstorm still looking very, very positive here, as Emma Clay is now just going to go ahead and reset and try to line up the move again. But we can see that championship leader is being very, very snappy on these turn-ins, just really just being aggressive and straight to the point, just pretty much darting over to the apex, trying to find any kind of move against Charlotte up ahead. But this is a really precarious spot for the championship leader to be. Your medium tires are falling off as 2 drivers get back-to-back penalties. I missed the first one, but Stark Loki will get the other. 3-second time penalty there, but the battle for the rest of the podium spots is still red hot here.
And this is the problem for Sharkstorm. The final sector can't stay close enough to Perkins. Means the Sauber has a little bit of buffer. The time in hand of about half a second as we start the new lap, I should say, cut the beam. But this time, Woodward looks a little bit closer out of 15 through 16, trying to stay as close as possible. Not going to be under pressure from Clay, so that's the first one ticked off the list. Can we finally, though, get ahead of the Sauber in front? Perkins has defended like a lion for the past 3 or 4 laps. Are we going defensive? No, Woodward still opts to stay behind for the time being. But look at Morel catching so quickly in P5, less than 3 seconds now. Off the back of Clay, second place is very much in the offing for the Red Bull to try and steal a march on the championship leader. Perkins was wide through 3. Another good run for Woodward up to the back of the Sauber, but still waiting in behind as that gap between Clay and Speed Queen just continues to erode sector by sector.
I'm sure that Charlotte can hear the Jaws theme kind of playing in her mind as the Sharkstorm gets closer, attacking with the absolute aggression of a Sharknado. as the Papaya car is trying to close into the back of the Sauber. And I mean, the dirty air is going to really just erode those tires. You were talking about erosion earlier with the gaps. The tire life on those mediums is going to start to erode as well. Emma Clay is really just doing a pretty smart thing right now, just kind of sitting there waiting for an opportunity to present itself, as she just kind of watches and stalks the McLaren a little bit here, trying to wait to see if those mediums are going to really start falling away, trying to wait for either another penalty or potentially another massive snap from the Papaya machine up ahead. The Aston Martin is going to really try to close in the gap, and you are pretty much going to have to really just think about going for the move here. It's make or break time now. You got 3 laps to go, and it's pretty much go big or go home if you're trying to get any of these podium spots here.
And 3 could become 4 very quickly, although what are the state of Morel's tyres in position number 5? Raccoon's with a penalty, 3 seconds, but has just moved up to 6th ahead of Muller, so that might not make too much of a difference if the Mercedes can get their toe down and get the gap of another 1.3 seconds ahead of the Sauber to keep hold of P6, which on the strategy I think is a pretty darn decent effort. Once again, Woodward can turn our attention to the Sauber in front rather than the Aston Martin behind. It was a scruffy second half of lap 26. But back on the button. This has been a corner that's just been providing a few issues, turn 9, but gets it right this time and threads the needle through 10 as well. Keeps it hooked to the inside. Good run. Once again takes a little chunk out of Perkins' advantage. But this sounds like a broken record. So hard to follow through the final sector, through 12, 13, 14 and eventually 15 as well. Just got to try and stay as close. You can see the boatload of dirt here, having to crank on a lot more steering lock than you would like, scrubbing the front tyres, scrubbing off the speed, overheating the front tyres as well. Such a minefield to try and follow this closely when you're pushing medium tyres that are definitely past their best. So hard. Velkin starting lap 28, the penultimate lap of this one. I think Woodward is just going to be a little bit too far back. Clay will be smelling blood potentially as well in the closing stages, as Woodward just struggles to get a foothold in this battle. Slightly deep through one, the smallest of opportunities, the smallest of margins presented itself. But Clay wasn't going to throw a loose move down the inside of turn 1 and have an accident.
Yeah, no, I mean, that would be the most heartbreaking way for your race to end. You've been in such a competitive spot the entire race, but then it all comes to a crashing end on the final corner. Definitely, on the penultimate lap, definitely not what you would have wanted. You would have worked so hard and got nothing in return. And you always want to return on investment, especially at this stage of the championship when you're fighting for that championship contention. And if she would have crashed there, that could have ended her championship hopes. Just like that, it really doesn't take a whole lot to really just break a championship attempt, especially at this point of the season with only 2 rounds to go. After this next lap and a half, Catherine will be starting the final lap here pretty shortly. And man, what a race that has been here tonight, but it's not quite over yet. 1 more lap to go. The battle for P2 and P3 is still raging on here, but I think at this stage it may just finish as it is right now as our drivers begin the final lap of the Qatar Grand Prix.
Perkins for the time being looks to have it covered and might be comfortable into turn 1 for the first time in quite a while. Look at the distance to the leader though. We need to watch Morel in position number 5. Should definitely pick up 4th place at the expense of Clay unless it's a scruffy final lap. Can Morel, with the helping hand of Sharkstorm's penalty, move up into 3rd position? Perkins, you would expect, will finish this race in 2nd unless they get overtaken by the McLaren on the final lap. Still 15 seconds off the back of Thelking, who's been a league in a class of 1 so far this evening. Supreme performance out in front. But can Woodward, is there any opportunity left? Can you just find the smallest of chances, maybe just spook Perkins into a mistake into the braking zone? I think the medium tyres have been cooked, and it was an expert defensive display from Perkins from laps 20 to 25 to keep that McLaren at arm's length, burn up the medium tyres on the Papaya McLaren car, and keep 2nd place firmly within their grasp. Just couldn't follow closely enough through the final few corners, but out in front, and out in front by a distance. This has been elementary. This has been absolutely bulletproof by Theo King out in front, trying to ignite a late championship charge. Started the day in position number 4, finishes it as the form horse. 15 seconds the margin, and that is supreme from the Racing Bulls to take it away from the established runners. Perkins will round the final corner. It should be 2nd place. Woodward just needs to be careful careful though, because Morel very much still in the ballpark. We'll wait for them to cut the beam. The Red Bull powering to the line. How many places? Just stealing it over the line. Morel takes it by, I think that is 0.03 of a second. It is 39 milliseconds. A good final lap for Morel, and will take points out of Clay and crucially points out of Woodward.
Yeah, that was very fine margins there at the end of the race to try to maximize those positions based on the penalties, and keeping it within the white lines definitely helped. We knew that every single penalty was going to be amplified by 10 in the grand scheme of the championship, especially with this championship order being so close here at the end of season 1. Miss Nutrix does get the fastest lap at the end on those soft tires, a 1:22.412, the fastest lap, but that was a spectacular Grand Prix here tonight. Very good effort given by all the drivers here tonight.
Very fun one indeed. The battle out in front, whilst the battle for the win may not have been that interesting because Thielking was so strong out in the lead, as Cutie Bunny and Heather, the last to come over the line in 11th and 12th, the final ones on the lead lap, I believe, to round us off. And that was a very interesting battle. It swung, the pendulum swinging both ways. Thought Perkins was going to get gobbled up when Woodward caught up to the back of the Sauber. But as it was, managed to repel the assaults for 3, 4, 5 laps. And that is what has got Charlotte Perkins a second place there. The awards, if you're interested, Thielking with the race win. We saw fastest lap right at the death there for Miss Nutrix. Driver of the day and most overtakes for Raccoons. It was a box office one for Raccoons with that 2-stop strategy, making it work, I believe, to still finish in 6th. And Miyuki Panda with the cleanest driver award. Yes, Raccoons did come home in 6th and comfortably as well. 5 seconds clear of Muller, who was just ahead of Jess Ball at the line. Miss Nutrix and Miyuki Panda rounding out your top 10. Cutie Bunny and Heather with strong races as well, finishing on the lead lap. Rustic Bone, Grapho, Curious Fire, Start Loki, Charlie, Aliti and Melanie, your classified finishers. Delighted to say that nobody retired from the race. It was an interesting one, a strategical game. Some people went for the 2-stop, the majority for the 1-stop, which was the primary strategy. Had some very dicey battles right at the death.
Yeah, that was a really good drive, and it's always awesome to see a 100% finishing rate of our drivers here tonight. Qatar is not an easy track by any standard, so a massive kudos to everybody for finishing it. No safety cars, no VSCs, no DNFs, no retirements. Pretty much an absolutely perfect race, and definitely an absolute classic in the history of this new but still extremely awesome championship.
100%. And for the second week running, once again, the pole position curse has been firmly broken. That is now back-to-back. Pole sit is going from lights to flag to take it. And it does make this championship battle just that little bit more fascinating going into the final couple of races to round things off. Abu Dhabi in Brazil, if you missed the calendar earlier on, with a driver that came into this in 4th with the longest of odds of all of the main protagonists to take this championship. Now putting down quite the marker, with Woodward getting beaten by Morel and Clay just behind them as well. All of them trading places. At one stage, like all of them could have finished in 2nd place, with the inclusion of Perkins as well. I'm going to be fascinated to see what some of them think about the closing stages of that race. Clay just couldn't quite get close enough. Woodward just couldn't quite force their way and break the back of the battle of Perkins in front. And that is what has got Charlotte Perkins a very well-deserved second, ahead of ahead of Morel, ahead of Woodward on the road, of course. And it could have big repercussions. We never know.
Yeah, I mean, every point is going to matter here, especially when you're this close to the end of the championship. It's only 2 more rounds left with Abu Dhabi and Brazil, 2 tracks that aren't as aggressive on the tire wear, but you still need to keep laser focus on the next 2 tracks when it comes to Abu Dhabi and Brazil, especially with the chance of rain hitting Brazil. I mean, driving in the wet is such a different ball game. Some drivers really thrive in the wet and others really don't thrive that well in the wet. So the rest of the season is going to be pure cinema. You guys are not going to want to miss it. So if you guys are brand new, if it is your first time, don't make it the last. Follow us on Twitch, subscribe, turn on post notifications on YouTube. And man, oh man, it was a fun one. A very fun race here tonight. Looking forward to see how the rest of the season goes.
100%. Much more exciting than Qatar often is in real life. I think we can all agree on that one. Fingers crossed that the top 3 will jump into the interview waiting room so that we can have a little bit of a chat and discuss the race with them and maybe how the championship complexion will play out in those final 2 races. People in the chat, if you want to hand out a driver of the day, there are definitely a lot of options for people to pick out as a driver of the day. Some of the underrated performances as well in there, just finishing inside the top 10. Jess Ball with a strong drive, one of the notable ones going for an alternate strategy. Who do you think, Patrick, would be given driver of the day? I think it was Raccoons, wasn't it, the game gave? I think that's obviously a very decent shout.
Yeah, I agree with the game, honestly. Raccoons, super punchy on the opening laps on that soft tire. It took 3 laps to get up into second on the road on that soft tire, which ultimately that didn't result in finishing a P2, but it's still a really good start. And it's so easy for something like a DSQ to really just affect your mental, and then it just becomes a domino effect of just your mentality isn't in it and you just start making silly mistakes. Not the case for Raccoons. Just absolutely dialed in, took that DSQ as extra motivation, and pretty much put on a mighty fine show here tonight, even if it did only result in the P6.
100%. Box office. That's what we like to see. The entertainment factor as well, which was definitely there in spades. While we wait for the top 3 to jump into the interview waiting room to have a little bit of a discussion with us, let's just remind you of where we are heading in the final few rounds and where we've already been. It's been a stacked calendar. We started in Australia. We will finish on the other side of the globe in South America with Japan, Bahrain, Austria, Silverstone, Spa, Monza, Qatar this week, and Abu Dhabi in between, seeing us blast across all 4 corners of the globe to some of the best circuits in the business. Abu Dhabi next week is going to be a very interesting one. Strategy-wise, it should be fairly linear, you would imagine, but it is a considerably better racing circuit, better for overtaking as well, since they got rid of those horrible chicanes that personally I absolutely despise, the one in the first sector and the one as you enter the final sector as well.
It's also like Singapore too, because I know Singapore is not on the calendar, maybe for next season. We don't know next season is expected to get revealed. But in 2023, when Singapore got rid of those 2 extra chicanes, it just made that section just all straight. It became a really fun track, especially for sim racing. It's a better track for sim racing than it is for the real world. Maybe these 2026 cars will be a bit better in that regard. But yeah, Abu Dhabi and Brazil too are going to be probably pretty linear in terms of strategy. Brazil might be a bit more tricky with the weather depending if it's going to be inters or softs, or not softs, inters or wets. You really got to try to decide which one is going to be the better one for that moment. And that one's going to take a lot of practice. You really need to practice in the wet because the weather is so unpredictable. If you get those inters or wets 1 degree too hot, they're going to just start falling apart like putting printer paper in a lake. It is just not going to be a good time.
Let's not rule out rain in Abu Dhabi as well. You know, stranger things have happened. That could be an interesting one going into next week.
That is true.
I highly doubt it, but when the percentage chance isn't 0, I will always believe there is a possibility that it might happen, of course. And it will be a fascinating way to see how the season rounds out with, and I'm delighted to say, still 4 championship protagonists that have converged on each other in this race as well. And the dynamic is going to be very interesting. Who goes in as the favourite? Woodward, I think, will still be leading the championship, or it might be level with Morel up at the top, up at the sharp end. But a big chunk taken up by Thelke. And that is the critical factor. They're all converging. It's going to make for a very, very exciting end.
I think Catherine has really put the rest of the championship protagonists on notice here, because that was a super dominant win, a real tour de force tonight. And I think if she could keep it up throughout Abu Dhabi and Brazil, then it's a very good possibility that she could at least close that gap and potentially at least come runner-up, if not taking the overall championship win. But we'll get there when we get there. We still have about another 6 days before we head to Abu Dhabi. And as we are still waiting on our interviewees, any bold predictions coming to Abu Dhabi? Are we going to see an absolute downpour of rain in Abu Dhabi, do you think?
I would be all for it. But again, unlikely but not impossible. I think it'd be interesting to see how the championship players play it, because the guys that are at the back of that queue come in with the best form. I think that's the most interesting dynamic that will be at play. Charlotte Perkins jumping in, so tired after that one. I can understand that. Qatar, the ultimate endurance race, with the exception of maybe Singapore in the wet, which is absolutely horrible for the people that have tried that one. But yeah, I think the form guide is effectively torn up because what we thought coming into this race has just been completely disproven by what we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting some really strong results from our championship contenders here, but I wasn't expecting just that level of dominance that we saw. And I mean, I don't think it'll be the same in Abu Dhabi, but I think we're still going to see absolute cinema when it comes to Abu Dhabi and Brazil, and even coming into next season. Because, I mean, we're going to blink, and then Season 2 is going to be underway. And, I mean, it's going to be really fun. Really hoping to see Miami on the calendar. A little bit of home track bias there, but it'll be really interesting to see what the calendar looks like for Season 2.
100%. Still waiting to see if anyone wants to join us. I'll put a little message in to see if anybody does want to have a chat. If not, we will, of course, sign out with the big guns returning next week, of course. I believe it will be TK and Carl that will be taking you through the action through Yas Marina. As we just hold on. We don't want to cut short because there could be some very interesting discussions going on. I believe once they finish the briefing, which I don't know how long that finishes or how long that lasts for. But will it be Thelking? Will it be Perkins? Perkins already in bed. We're going to put on the 30-second warning. If you want to come in and have a chat, we're counting down from now, and Thelking is going to jump in very quickly, so we will just hold off on that one. I'm very interested to see how it came across from her perspective, because from our perspective, it was faultless, and that's probably the word I'll describe it to her.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much just like 2023 Max Verstappen, essentially just absolutely just like getting pole position and then just checking out pretty much. That's exactly how that race pretty much transpired for Catherine, as she has now joined the interview waiting room. So we will be talking with our race winner here very shortly.
I don't have the perms to drag. Oh, no. If Catherine can join, Jess, you might have to help us out here. I can't drag them across. We might need some support. If you're there, Jess, of course. Or Victoria as well. Catherine is in the commentary box. Thank you for whoever did that. But, I mean, the word that we were talking about, faultless, bulletproof, comes up as well. That must have been a very, very enjoyable drive for yourself.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was quite lovely, kind of just chilling in the front. It is a little, I guess, disappointing. I don't want to say that, but like, I wish I could have maybe had some battles with some other drivers and made it more interesting for the viewers watching. It's nice to be able to win with such a large margin.
Were you confident that you were going to be able to put on that kind of display coming into it? Were you surprised by the margin of pace that you had over everybody else?
Yeah, I was surprised of kind of that 14-second lead. I did have a feeling going into the race that I was going to be quick, kind of, near at the front, but I wasn't expecting to be so quick today.
Patrick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Catherine, once again, congratulations on a very strong win. And do you think you'll be able to carry on this momentum heading into Abu Dhabi next week? Because you definitely put the other championship leaders on notice.
I sure hope so, that I can continue this kind of performance. Qatar is one of my favorite tracks, so I was feeling very comfortable during the race. But Abu Dhabi is definitely a lot different, and I guess we'll see going into the race next week how that goes.
Yeah, you were talking about Qatar being one of your strongest tracks and Abu Dhabi being a much different track. How do you feel about the season finale of Brazil in about 2 weeks' time? Do you think you could have a solid result there, even if the rain does show up?
Like I said before, I hope to continue this performance. I'll keep working at it, keep practicing. Brazil and Abu Dhabi are very good tracks for battling and overtaking. So I don't know what much else to say other than that. So yeah, I'm hoping I could continue this strong form.
All right, I know that you're definitely exhausted, so we're going to go ahead and let you go. But once again, Catherine, congratulations on the win. Very strong performance indeed, and we'll see you in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, see you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you for jumping in. Well, faultless, I mean, all the superlatives. Sublime, imperious, that was a devastating display from Catherine Thelkin, and like you said, just putting a few of the championship protagonists' eyes on stalks after that one. But I believe that is everybody that is going to be having a chat with us this evening. Before we go, make sure you're here this time next week for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix penultimate round of the season. It's going to be a barnstormer. I'm going to bet money on that already. Also, you can see in the bottom right there, if I can point in the correct direction, Sim Racing Centre, the best setups in the business, everybody. If you need some help with trying to just extract a little bit more performance out of yourself, head over to Sim Racing Centre. Obviously very proud to be partnered with those guys. But before we head out, of course, thank you to you for letting us two come in. Commandeer Commentary Corner for the first time in W1. Been a very, very enjoyable one for myself and Patrick, I have no doubt. And Patrick, you've got your tags there, but where can people find you on the old social medias if they want to check out what you're up to?
I don't really post a whole lot, but if you guys do want to check me out on Instagram, it is rekkas.gg, rekkas.gg. I also do have a livery page where I do Gran Turismo liveries. It's just like a little fun hobby. It's the same thing, rekkas.liveries. So if you want to check out both of those pages, that would be absolutely awesome. But yeah, I do want to thank the entire team at W1 for giving both of us a chance. It was a really fun experience. I enjoyed it. Really good race here in Qatar, and it's also nice to be commentating at not 3:30 a.m. in the morning, as much as I do love the Australians and what they do. But yeah, I just want to once again thank the staff team at W1 for giving us a shot, and hopefully we'll be back soon.
Nice to have the sunlight coming through those blinds for once, I imagine, when you're doing it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And, you know, not fighting sleep, slamming a Red Bull at 4 a.m.
Yeah. That is not ideal. If you're interested in what I'm doing, wilco.coms on Instagram and TikTok. But thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us for the last 2 hours or so. TK and Carl, I believe it is, will be back in the box in 7 days' time for the penultimate round of the season in Abu Dhabi, where, of course, we have a 4-way championship battle, everybody. It's going to be hugely, hugely exciting. Make sure you're there in 7 days' time. But for myself and Patrick, it's been an absolute pleasure to jump into the box this evening. And until next time, be here next week and have a wonderful rest of this week. I will see you very soon.
Goodbye.